The global pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine created a massive disruption in aerospace and defense supply chains. In fact, our customers told us that it was the second largest challenge that they were facing this year. In order to shore up those supply chains, they're employing a bunch of different techniques, which include diversification of the supply chain, sourcing their parts from multiple vendors, from utilizing nearshoring or localization, whereby you're sourcing your parts and materials from your own country, your own area, or neighboring countries in order to avoid the challenges of global shipping. And also sourcing materials from politically allied nations, avoiding the effects of trade embargoes that we've seen. We've hit a step change in the commercialization of space. So with programs like space tourism finally becoming a reality, with more and more commercial organizations providing launch services, which is bringing down the cost to launch space vehicles, it's having a huge impact on the marketplace. In fact, the very fact that the launch vehicles being used are reusable is changing how we're looking at space, which used to be sort of everything, or for the most part, almost everything was consumed through the launch activity. Now we have to think about refurbishing, repairing, maintaining those launch vehicles. And that's opening the window to other things. Like in space, the industry is shifting towards space infrastructure servicing, where with the launch costs coming down, we're actually looking at the ability to maintain assets in orbit. And that's completely changing the way that we're going to look at that. And all of this coming together is going to result in a market growth of over a third on the commercial side of space. Everybody seems to have been talking about advanced air mobility for the last few years, but how close is it actually to coming to fruition? Well, there's a couple major things that happened this past year. First of all, Joby Aviation received their Part 135 certification, which means that they can behave as an operator and start to set forth processes for actually running advanced air vehicles in real life. We've got a number of platforms that are moving into flight testing stages. So these are now no longer just conceptual aircraft, but are actually things that can physically fly, that are getting closer and closer to certification. Speaking of certification, the most major milestone that happened in 2022 was that the FAA proposed certification framework for the Joby Aviation model JAS4-1 eVTOL aircraft. So before, where regulation was a nebulous, to be determined thing with the FAA working in the background, now we actually have a framework in place that is leading towards the entry into service of these vehicles. MRO software systems are kind of having a bit of a moment. We have a situation where there are a number of large carriers that have been keeping antiquated mainframe systems running at the core of their business for decades and holding it together with string and chewing gum. And it's at the point where they're realizing that they're not able to fully transform their business without making significant changes at the core system level. And what that means is they're coming to market. At the same time, generic ERP implementations that went in the 2000s are now being faced with a situation where, because they weren't a fit for purpose solution, they were heavily customized. And now when their software provider is forcing them to do an upgrade, they're realizing that the significance of that upgrade is the same as a brand new implementation because of all of that customization. So they are also looking at what's available in the market. And lastly, even some of the best of breed solutions that went in the 2010s, they're hitting a forced upgrade from their vendor as well. So they're realizing that it's an opportunity to take a look at the market. So take all of this together, and we're predicting that 1/3 of the leading airline operators in the world will be modernizing their legacy MRO systems. In the near term, airlines are looking at immediate answers, and the one that is closest to fruition is sustainable aviation fuel. What is sustainable aviation fuel? Well, it's essentially traditional hydrocarbon fuel that's going to be burned in the existing kinds of jet turbine engines, but it's manufactured in such a way as to be more sustainable, either sourced from waste products like leftover cooking oil, or even hopefully from carbon capture processes. And the significant thing about sustainable aviation fuel is that right now there isn't enough of it to meet demand. IATA is projecting that this year in 2023, the sustainable aviation production is going to reach about 1 billion liters, which is 3 times as much as last year. But that still isn't even nearly enough. We have to have an order of magnitude shift in terms of the amount of sustainable aviation fuel that's produced in order to meet even the demand that's there today.